So today I'm participating in a new tag that's going around YouTube, and you might have seen it, called the 10-10 money tag. And it's basically 10 things I wish I knew about money 10 years ago. My list is probably a lot longer than 10 things, but let's just stick with the main 10 and try to get through them kind of quick, okay? So the first thing was that I wish I'd realized I wasn't a victim to my money. I knew that I didn't have much experience with money when I got married, and I just kind of checked out and left everything to my husband and just assumed he was going to handle everything. And while he did the best he could, there was definitely a lot of stuff I could have helped him with had I not just assumed that I was too stupid or too disorganized or too young or too whatever to handle my own finances. So the very first thing would be that I'm not a victim, that I'm a grown woman, I can take charge and be in charge of my finances, be the general of my finances, and tell my money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Number 2, budgets are not scary. Budgets really aren't scary. The idea of a budget, just because of the own weird ideas I had in my head of it, that was scary. I thought I was going to have to say no all the time. I was going to do all this complicated math. I'd have to learn about interest rates, and it was overwhelming. But budgets aren't scary. I love my budget. I'm slightly obsessive about my budget. Now that I've got our household budget basically down to a fine art, I love going on there and going through the numbers and different categories and the sinking funds we're saving for and the balances on our debt snowball credit cards that we're paying down, and just seeing the progress that we're making. So it's not scary. Unknowns, financial unknowns, are much scarier than what the real thing is. Not that it is going to be easy at first, and you need to give yourself grace and time to get better at it, but they're definitely not scary. Number 3, find out who Dave Ramsey is and what he really does. I was familiar with the name Dave Ramsey. Unlike a lot of people that had no clue who Dave Ramsey was when they got started, I had a clue who he was. I'd even heard the name Larry Burkett, who is a forerunner to Dave Ramsey, but I had never taken the time myself to go into what he taught or anything to do with finances, because I just found the whole area extremely intimidating. And so I just thought he was this old guy that, sorry Dave, you weren't really, like back then, like, I hate to think about it, but you weren't much older than me back when I first heard your name. So sorry about that, but I just thought he was this old guy that talked about boring, dry things, that the only people that had to worry about any of that were people with lots of money. Because I had this completely wrong misconception that the only people who needed to budget and know about finances and worry about any of that stuff are people who had lots of money. People who didn't have any money were under no obligation to budget it because they could barely make ends meet. And you have a lower income, you have more of an obligation to be wise and smart and skilled in how you handle it. Because you have less of it to stretch. There's not as much natural flow of padding to help with any mistakes. So there is, I think, when you have a lower income like we did 10 years ago, there's more accountability there in what you do with it, because there's less room for mistakes, and that could impact your family. Not that there's any less accountability, I'm trying to make this sound right, but I found out that people who make more money tend to make budgets more often than people who make less money, which makes sense because, you know, if you've made more money, you've obviously made some financial choices that are wise, that have gotten you to that point, so you're already going to have a natural inclination to be more smart with your money. When you have a little bit of money, a lower income, or maybe one of you lost your job and, you know, you were trying to live on one income, then you need to be even smarter with it. You need to learn how to stretch those pennies 9 ways to Sunday. So number 3 was definitely would find out for myself who Dave Ramsey was, what he did, and start putting those things into practice 10 years ago. I wish so bad I had done that 10 years ago. 4, no credit cards. No credit cards. Yeah, the first credit card I ever had, if I remember correctly, was a JCPenney card with like a $300 balance. And I rarely used it, and when I did, I paid it off. Because, you know, let's face it, store cards are easier to get when you're first building credit than anything else. But I very quickly, and my husband very quickly, racked up credit cards. And ones that, when we first started, we had excellent credit. We had good interest rates and high balances, high, credit limits. And we just assumed we'd, just like everybody else does, that we'd be able to pay this off no problem. And life happens and it gets pushed back, and just the minimum payment gets made and money goes towards something else. And so here we are, with the debt snowball right now, working on paying that off. So no credit cards. All right, next thing. Oops, my pages in my little notebook slid over. Oh, have a future plan. This one was kind of tricky. Have a future plan for savings, for college for the kids, for retirement. My husband's background is really different from other people's. My husband's background is old order Amish, and we both were part of a church system and group for a while that was very similar to a Mennonite group. And for the most part, in those groups, they very much discourage higher education. They feel like it's too much exposure to things that would go contrary to their worldview, and that it inspires pride in a way that would be displeasing to God. They have some really unique views. So when we first got married, still being in that church circle before we left it, there was no question of really saving for college. It was, for the most part, people have family businesses and they build onto that. Girls are not really encouraged to pursue a career unless by some chance they don't get married. And because of this, we just didn't really think about saving for college for the kids. We had our own business. It was doing well. We just assumed the boys would go into it. And I know that sounds crazy, and you guys are over there like, what? But honestly, growing up in something like that, that's just the way you think until you start to break free from it. And we did. We have. And we want the kids to be able to be whatever they want to be and pursue, whatever career suits their talents and that God calls them to, whatever that may be, boys and girls. However, we weren't saving for college. We aren't saving for college, not yet, because we're in the middle of baby step 2 on our debt snowball. So I wish 10 years ago we had had a plan to save for the future, to save for retirement, to have just a savings account that we just never touched unless it was an absolute emergency. So that's number 5. Number 6, don't finance anything. And this is kind of the same as credit cards, but we financed, what did we finance? We financed our mobile home that we lived in. 10 years ago, we were in a mobile home. And we spent the first 10 years of our marriage in a mobile home because we couldn't afford anything else. And we were building up some savings, but for a bigger house later on. But we had lived in a mobile home until we built this house for 10 years. And we financed that. We didn't have savings put down, which I'm okay, houses, your living conditions, most people are going to have a mortgage. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but we financed stuff like couches, and we thought they were nice, but they really weren't very good quality. We didn't do our homework. And so, we financed couches, we financed, what else did we finance? We never financed cars. I have to say that's probably the one thing we don't have to look back on. Until about 4 years ago, we never financed a car. We always just paid cash for used cars, which is what Dave Ramsey recommends. What we needed a bigger car when our 4th and 5th children came along only a year apart, and we didn't have the money saved up for a car at that point. And so we financed the Suburban that we have, and then we also have a small car payment on a work truck and a work vehicle. And we are in the process of trying to sell the work vehicle. We're also in the process of trying to sell a boat that we did pay cash for, but we want to get rid of to get a slightly bigger vehicle. We need something really that seats 8, that has more room, and just to get out of those payments. Those payments just suck so much out of your income every month. And so I want to get out of those, and James is all for it, and so we're trying to sell those. But don't finance anything. Just say no to yourself, save up, and buy it when you can actually truly afford it. Number 7 is continually educate yourself. As much as I was ignorant of finances 10 years ago, And I should have found out who Dave Ramsey was and what he did. Even today, even knowing everything that I know and how much it's been a help to the family, continually educate yourself. Right now, it is a challenge for me to look into things like Roth IRAs, 401k type savings for self-employed businesses. There's just no excuse for saying, well, I'm just going to stick it in the bank, I'll make gobs of money, and somehow it'll turn out okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. To learn what the penalties are for pulling out of retirement funds, to know where the best places are to invest. Whether it's scary or intimidating or not, and it is for me, you still have no excuse to not educate yourself and know what you're doing with your money. So number 7, continually throughout your life, educate yourself. And not just when it comes to finances, when it comes to anything. Parenting, for us, I'm continually reading stuff on minimalism to help our family streamline and make our lives less stressful. I'm educating myself as far as organizing and planning our time a little better. I've got a new planner coming I'm all excited about. I'm going to do an unboxing when that comes in. So it's just a lifelong process. Don't give yourself an excuse. Don't slack off. Be your hardest critic and continually educate yourself on those things that are going to benefit you. Number 8, quality over quantity, or even it could say quality over availability. Don't buy the cheap piece of crap because it's cheaper. Buy a quality anything at a good price, and it's going to last you much longer. I run into this with clothes all the time. You know, that $2 t-shirt, unless it's a really quality shirt that's just been marked down a lot, is not going to last as long as the $10 t-shirt that you got on sale that you're going to wear for the next 5 years. Think about, and this is something I saw on Budget Girl's video about her clothing rule. Her clothing rule is to never pay retail for anything and to break down the cost of use for an item. You know, a $10 pair of shoes that you wear 5 times before they fall apart is $2 per use. You spend $100 on a pair of shoes and you wear it for 3 or 4 years, you're starting to get into pennies per use. Plus you have a much nicer, better looking pair of shoes. So quality over quantity or availability. Spend a little time, do your research, do your homework. When you're getting ready to buy something, read online reviews, ask your friends what they think. Look at sales. Wait for sales once you find the item. Don't pay retail. But don't just buy cheap stuff just because it's super, super cheap. I mean, I love the Dollar Tree as much as the next person. And I love, you know, good sales on clothing. But I'll tell you what, at some of these stores, you have to really, really be careful and look at the item and decide if it's really worth the money you're putting into it. Sometimes it's better to pay 2 times as much or a few dollars extra to get something that's going to be quality and last you a whole lot longer. 9, learn to live with no. As much as budgets were scary and I felt like they would be a tool of denial, and sometimes they are, I have learned to live with no, both with telling myself no and being able to tell others no, whether it comes to too many demands on my time, too many demands on things that hurt my health, which is already, you know, I have chronic health issues, so I have to be careful. I have to learn to say no. Sometimes it hurts other people's feelings. Sometimes it hurts me. I mean, there's stuff that I would just love to be able to do and I can't, health-wise. Learn to say no to your kids. They don't need every piece of plastic crap in the store. Learn to take them to the store and tell them no without them having a temper tantrum. You know, learn to tell yourself no. I have found that when I get bored, I spend. And I have found with the budget, if I'm really careful and with a grocery budget, if I can save an extra couple of dollars here and there, I can get myself a little something here and there. But since I've cut out fun money, it's not a lot, usually. And so I have learned to tell myself no. Recently, I have gone through a huge yarn craving. I love to knit. And it can be difficult with fibromyalgia to do a lot of long-term knitting, but when I get a craving, I have to have something nice to knit. And I do not knit with acrylics. Do not send me to Michael's. Do not send me to Joann's. Do not send me to Hobby Lobby. It is all acrylic crap. I can't stand it. And most cottons, I don't like either. It's got to be some kind of wool blend, cashmere, i.e. expensive for the most part. you can get some nice skeins of yarn for between $8 to $10, but most projects are going to take more than one skein of yarn. Well, I have a little mini yarn stash, and I sold most of it at a yard sale, and I had a few pieces left, but I was like, I'm kind of over that, and I really just wanted to get some yummy, squishy, amazing yarns and start knitting. And yeah, it was like, you know what? You can't afford this right now. You cut out your fun money. We have other priorities. You still have yarn left, even if it's not your favorite. So I made myself go back to the stash. I found this really pretty pink and green wool blend, and I'm not knitting anything fancy. I just have the urge to knit, so I'm making some little dolly blankets for my daughter just to have something to pass the time. She's fascinated. They're cute as a button, and I didn't spend any money. So sometimes you have to talk yourself down and say no, and rein it in a little, and you have to get used to saying it to other people. And sometimes they're going to be really gracious and understand, and sometimes they won't. But sometimes you have to learn to say no. I wish I'd learned to say no years ago when I was spending too much money. I wish I'd learned to say no to my fears, to other people's expectations. So that's a huge one. And last but not least, number 10 is I wish we had bought a smaller house. Now, a lot of people that have house regrets when it comes to budgeting and money have been through several houses. We have never owned a house. We have owned the mobile homes that we've lived in, and we truly did need a bigger house. It wasn't an issue of, well, I have a house, but I really wish I had a nicer house. We were in a mobile home. We'd been in one for 10 years. It was a 2-bedroom, and we had 3 children. We did put an addition onto the trailer with an extra bedroom and a laundry room because, as you know, most trailers don't have rooms assigned to that. But it was just very small. And with 3 rambunctious little kids, trailers are not the sturdiest buildings in the world, and we really needed a house. But we kind of took the mentality of go big or go home. So 10 years later, which we've been in this house 6 years, so it's 6 years ago, I wish we had been a little more conservative and either bought a place that was smaller and maybe not more than $150,000, or built one that was smaller, because now we have a bigger mortgage, and that can be a real discouraging drain. We probably would sell this place now if we could, but the housing market isn't real good right around here right now, as it isn't in most places. If it recovers over the next year or so, that would definitely be something we would be willing to do, even if it meant remodeling an older place. I'm a big Joanna Gaines fan, so we would probably do something along those lines. But yeah, so buying a bigger house, that's something that I wish we hadn't done, that we'd gone with the smaller version. We had a lot of undefined discouragement and discontent back then. So 10 years ago, there's a lot of things that I wish that I knew about money, but live and learn. And this video isn't about beating yourself up about past mistakes. It really isn't. It's about helping those who are you 10 years ago, and it's also about just cheering yourself on for how far you've come. Oh my gosh, I have a budget. If you would have told me that 10 years ago, I would have laughed. I would have had a fit of hysteria, most likely. So anyway, I hope this video was an encouragement. We'll link to the original poster that started this. I believe it was Frugal Chic Life. And I'm looking forward to seeing all your 10-10 videos. Let me know, what are your 10 things you wish you knew about money 10 years ago?